Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Unscripted, the unpredictable moments that make life extraordinary, by Ernie Johnson, Jr., narrated by Ernie Johnson, Jr. In honor of my father, Ernie Johnson, Sr., in admiration of my mother, Lois, in gratitude to my sisters, Dawn and Chris, in love with my wife, Cheryl, and our amazing kids, Eric, Maggie, Michael, Carmen, Allison, and Ashley. Forward by John Smoltz. I've encountered all kinds of people in the sport of baseball as well as outside of sports, and hands down, Ernie Johnson Jr. is one of my favorites in the world. Ernie and I go way back to the days when his father called Braves games, back where I was on the mound doing my best to throw out the next batter. As a pitcher, you have the luxury of working 5 days and then listening or watching games 4 days. I would catch games on TV from the clubhouse while charting games and listening to the Braves broadcasters. Ernie Johnson Sr.'s voice was one I came to rely on and cherish. In addition, the players travel with the broadcasters, so we were all one big family. I've gotten to know Ernie Jr. as well and saw the bond that he and his dad shared. These days we hang out once a week, if our schedules allow, in a Bible study with some other guys. You'll read about us in these pages. So when I say I know Ernie, I say that not only because the same sport employed us, but because we have spent quite a bit of personal time with each other. I've gotten to know his heart, and what a heart it is. We used to have more time together, Ernie Jr. and I. After retiring, I got to work alongside him calling games for TBS. I will never forget those times we had traveling together and witnessing some historic plays. It was then that I witnessed his struggles and family moments that all of us have to deal with. The way he handled these struggles that stretched his faith and patience beyond what most of us could handle, will forever be stitched in my mind. You're a giant, Ernie. Now I'm going to confess something I probably shouldn't. Truth is, I have started and failed to finish many books, but I finished Unscripted in 3 days, which in and of itself is a major thing for me. But more importantly, it's a testament to this. Never will I find a finer man than Ernie Johnson, whose profound humility and love for God and his family are so evident here. Ernie's not perfect and has not done everything right in his life, but he has a deep desire to live a purposeful life that honors God. I promise you will be moved and inspired by his story. This book could quite possibly transform your attitude as well as your heart toward all of life. As I read it, I found myself wanting to be a better man. Unscripted is a must-read, and I know you'll be as captivated as I was when you read it. That's from John Smoltz, Atlanta Braves pitcher, Hall of Famer, 2015. Introduction. If you include the very first time I sat behind a microphone as a 20-year-old, sweaty-palmed junior at WUOG, the University of Georgia student radio station, I've been broadcasting for 40 years now. I've made my living on television for the last 38, most of those as a sportscaster, and yet there's still no guarantee you know who I am. Maybe you're not a sports fan, or perhaps you've made a conscious effort to keep your TV viewing to a minimum. I have no problem with that. In fact, my wife Cheryl fits that description on both counts, especially the not a sports fan part of that equation. In the pages that follow, you'll get to know Cheryl very well, and I am certain you will find her as enchanting as I did when I met her 37 years ago. So all of that being said, let me introduce myself. I'm Ernie Johnson, Jr. Those of you who already know me from my work on the Turner networks, TNT and TBS, will probably refer to me as the guy who hosts the show Inside the NBA, which features NBA Hall of Famers Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal, and two-time NBA champion Kenny Smith, or as the guy who calls Major League Baseball with another Hall of Famer, Cal Ripken, and All-Star pitcher Ron Darling. Still, while my appearances on television perhaps gave you a clear idea of what I do, they didn't necessarily tell you who I am. That changed dramatically in the spring of 2015. Now, it is quite rare in my business for one network to air a feature on a personality from a competing network, but that's exactly what happened in 2015. Jeremy Schaap, an award-winning journalist for ESPN, approached me about producing a profile of my family. He was aware that my wife Cheryl and I are the parents of 6 children, 4 of whom are adopted, 3 of whom have special needs, and 1 of whom has a fatal disease, muscular dystrophy. Jeremy knew of my past battle with cancer and about the bond I shared with my late father and other longtime broadcaster, Ernie Johnson Sr. Jeremy wanted to tell my story on the network's E60 news magazine show. My wife and I were hesitant at first to allow television cameras that kind of access into what had always been a very private part of our lives. But then we thought about the possible benefits. What if this feature struck a chord with parents who were considering adoption or were going through the daily rigors of caring for a special needs child? What if it encouraged a man or a woman faced with the reality of chemotherapy? Or what if it helped to strengthen or repair the relationship between a father and a son? We agreed to allow Jeremy and his producer Dan Lindberg to have at it. What they produced, a 25-minute feature titled My Story, Ernie Johnson Jr., did all the things Cheryl and I prayed it would. The response was staggering and humbling. And more than a year later, as the program has re-aired and been distributed online, I continue to hear from fathers and sons, and cancer patients, and adoptive parents, and moms and dads with special needs kids who were impacted in some way by the heartfelt presentation Jeremy and Dan produced. We're eternally grateful for that. And so now I've done something I have long thought about doing, even before the E60 piece was ever conceived. I've written a book, the one you're holding, or listening to. I call it Unscripted, not only because it's the perfect description of the show I'm blessed to work on with Charles, Shaq, and Kenny, but also because my life away from the TV cameras has been one unscripted, unforeseen, unforgettable moment after another. My wish is not that you regard our family in some glorified, elevated way. Far from it. My wish is that this book will speak to you on some level right where you live in the area of parenting or faith or heartbreak or triumph. And my wish is that this book will honor my Father and my Heavenly Father. Here's to embracing the unscripted. Enjoy. Chapter 1. Blackberries. It was a fastball about belt high. I say fast, meaning it was a straight pitch, not a curveball or a slider. Dads whose sons were in a league of 8 and soon-to-be 9-year-olds in the mid-1960s didn't let their sons throw breaking stuff. Anyway, I had a good look at this belt-high fastball from my position at shortstop in a game that we, the V's, don't ask, I don't know, were leading by a couple of runs. That lead was in jeopardy because this belt-high fastball, which I had such a good look at, was lined over my head before I had a chance to take my glove off my knee. It bounced once in left center field and cleared the chain-link fence, which no player in our league had ever cleared on a hop, much less on the fly. So this ground rule double was pretty impressive in my book. The hit scored the runners from second and third and tied the game. This necessitated a meeting on the mound so our coach could tell us, the infielders, what we should do if the next ball was hit to us, now that the go-ahead runner stood at second base, still grinning about his display of 8-year-old power. The coach had his say. We nodded as if we understood the defensive strategy he had outlined, though I'm pretty sure our first baseman was thinking more about how good a snow cone would taste when this game was over. So was I. It may have been an early Saturday morning, but it was Georgia, and it was hot. It was try not to think about snow cones in the middle of the game hot. And so we, the V's, look, maybe the league was just using the alphabet to name teams. I don't know, so stop asking. We trotted back to our positions, and that's when this story for me became worth telling. You see, before another pitch could be thrown, we had to find 2 of our outfielders. When that belt-high fastball had been sent screaming, or at least speaking in more than an indoor voice, over my head and into the gap, our left fielder and center fielder had converged and had the best seats in the house to watch the ball hit the grass and disappear into the trees and bushes and underbrush that adorned this part of the ballpark where no ball had ever gone before. And during our meeting of the minds on the mound, They apparently had taken it upon themselves to climb the chain-link fence and retrieve the official league baseball. This was not necessary because while the league may have been strapped when it came to naming its teams, I am certain the umpiring crew was equipped with more than one baseball for a game of this magnitude. Perhaps they had wanted to find that ball and award it to the Pee-wee power hitter who was now flexing his biceps at second base while waiting for play to resume. Whatever their motives, the search was underway, and the rest of us Vs, don't even, sprinted toward the fence to provide encouragement, or point to where we thought the ball had gone, or simply ask, "Why are you on that side of the fence?" As it turns out, this was not a search that would require a compass or bloodhounds or even 20/20 eyesight. The ball had come to rest in plain sight, about 10 feet past the fence. Our two missing outfielders had seen it, but they'd also discovered a blackberry bramble, and it was filled with a motherload of ripe and apparently delicious blackberries. While the infielders were getting chapter and verse from the coach on what to do if the ball was hit in our direction, our left fielder and center fielder were stretching their skinny arms through the bramble, deftly avoiding the menacing thorns, rejoicing in their discovery, and testifying to another reason this game is indeed our national pastime. I'll be the first to admit this may not be a thigh-slapping, gut-busting story. It is unlikely anyone who hears it will immediately jump on their Twitter account and give it an LOL. It probably falls more into the, "Oh, isn't that amusing" category. But a game that features a blackberry delay struck a chord with my dad. And oh, by the way, I have no memory of how the rest of that game turned out. From that point on, it simply became the blackberry moment. It would be years before that story became for me more than the tale of a Little League game delayed. We would tell and retell that story in our family and laugh each time as if we'd just gotten back from the ballpark. My father was a major league pitcher in the 1950s, most notably as a reliever for those great Milwaukee Braves teams, and he delighted in the innocence of that story. As he transitioned from the playing field to the broadcast booth as the Braves moved from Milwaukee to Atlanta, he was a regular on the banquet and luncheon circuits. If you were a member of the Kiwanis Club, the Optimist Club, the JCs, the Rotary Club, the Salvation Army, you heard Ernie Johnson Sr. deliver a speech. I loved to tag along. I loved to hear again what the members of those clubs were hearing for the first time. What it was like to play alongside the likes of Hank Aaron and Eddie Matthews, and Warren Spahn and Lou Burdett. What it was like to pitch to Stan Musial, and Ted Williams, and Jackie Robinson. And what was even better than hearing my dad tell those stories was hearing and seeing the reaction. Belly laughs, palms hitting tables, making silverware clink against plates and drinking glasses. Middle-aged men trying to catch their breath before the old right-hander uncorked another gem from the memory bank. Every once in a while, he'd throw this one in. And then there was that morning when little Ernie, and he's seated right down there in front, was playing a Pee-wee game over at Murphy Candler Park. And the story of the blackberry moment would be told by the greatest storyteller I ever knew. In many ways, that story has become central to my perspective on, you name it, work, relaxation, life. It's a kind of parable about not being afraid to step away from the game. Translated, the job, the meeting, the conference call, the list of emails, the seemingly pressing matter at hand. To appreciate the unexpected, unscripted moments. When I stop to think about it, it's always the blackberry moments that stand out when I think about the wide variety of sports I've had the chance to be a part of in the winding course of my career. In 1998, I was doing track and field play-by-play at the World Cup Finals in Johannesburg, South Africa. Know what I remember most about that trip? Not the 100 and 200-meter golds won by Marion Jones, remarkable as they were. No, it was a visit to Soweto. A day or two before the runners ran, the pole vaulters vaulted, the high jumpers jumped, and the steeplechasers did whatever steeplechasers do. I'd heard about Soweto. It was a focal point in the fight against apartheid. It was there in June of 1976 that thousands of high school students staged a protest march, the Soweto Uprising, that turned deadly as South African authorities opened fire. Now, 22 years later, I was riding in a van with a producer and a video crew, following a busload of U.S. athletes to the township where a new sports center for kids had been built. I looked out the window of the van at the rows upon rows of what were basically tiny huts with tin roofs, thinking at times it appeared a neighborhood had been built on a landfill. And I saw this brand new facility and this sea of kids and parents waiting outside for this busload of athletes to arrive. And I remember the smiles. I still have photos of that day on the shelves of my home office. And every time I look at those snapshots, I see something new, and the feeling of that day returns, and I feel lucky. USA Track and Field gave us T-shirts to give out to the kids. And I have pictures of tiny kids wearing extra-large T-shirts that nearly touch the ground. There's a picture of me reaching to shake hands with a group of kids, and they're laughing, and so are the moms and a grandmother. There are looks on faces that say, "Who's this guy with the receding hairline and the plastic credential hanging around his neck? Or what's with this hand extended? You want me to slap it or shake it?" Oh, that day was marvelous. And I remember as we drove back to our Johannesburg hotel that evening, we saw the sun setting in our rearview mirror so brilliantly that we had to pull over so we could take pictures. The creator had his paintbrush out again, and it was a spectacular finish to an unforgettable day. I'll tell you the truth, I had to look up on the internet the highlights of that 1998 track meet, but I will never forget those Soweto images or that sunset. That's what unscripted BlackBerry moments do. I think God has placed blackberry brambles along the paths we walk every day. We just need the eyes to see them, the ears to hear them, and the hearts to detect them. All that stands in the way is the busyness of life. We're all so focused on sticking to the script from one day to the next, one meeting to the next, one sales call to the next, that we blow right by the unscripted moments that can profoundly impact not just our lives, but also the lives of those with whom we share the planet, the workplace, or a home. If there's one thing life has taught me, it's not to fear the unscripted, but to embrace it. On August 16th, 2011, the story of that BlackBerry moment at that Little League park and all it has meant occupied my every thought. Soon it would come spilling from my own lips as I delivered my father's eulogy. Chapter 2. Dad. My father had hairy ears. Check that. He had really, really hairy ears. He had, "Hey, what are you doing wearing earmuffs in the middle of summer?" hairy ears. When I would see an infomercial on late-night TV extolling the virtues of a state-of-the-art trimmer that could remove unsightly nose and ear hairs, I would dismiss its claims outright because the manufacturers had obviously never tried that thing out on Ernest Thorwald Johnson, Sr. I would go so far as to say that the folks who make weed eaters would have been at least a bit intimidated by the sight. I wondered sometimes when he asked me to repeat something I'd said to him if my words hadn't gotten tangled up in that underbrush and never reached his eardrums. So where's this going, you ask? I'm getting there. In the last month or so of my father's days, before congestive heart failure brought the curtain down on what was a George Bailey-style wonderful life, he lived for a short time in an Atlanta rehabilitation center. Ernie Sr., or Big Guy, as we called him around the house, or Poppy, as the grandchildren called him, or the right-hander, as I called him when we worked Atlanta Braves telecast in the mid-1990s, was 6'4", a great athlete, whose talents had taken him to the major leagues as a pitcher for the Milwaukee Braves and the Baltimore Orioles in the 1950s. Now, at the age of 87, he was struggling. Strength, energy, balance, they were all leaving him. So was his memory. His mind was playing tricks on him. The early stages of Alzheimer's had become more and more evident. I think that was the most difficult part of his illness for our family to witness. My dad's loss of access to the vault of memories he'd accumulated was heartbreaking. One afternoon, in the rehab center's living room / sunroom / visiting area for families, I finally did something with my dad I had never done before. I trimmed those hairy ears. The trimmer with a fresh, right out of the package battery hummed as I turned it on. With the trimmer inches from my dad's left ear, I began to wonder if there was any fine print in the instruction manual detailing what to do if the device became jammed or entangled in hair too dense for this model to handle. But I forged ahead, and with great success, I might add. In fact, the left ear was going so well that I thought I'd have to ask the janitorial staff if they had a broom and a dustpan I could borrow. Dad and I laughed about what had to be an interesting, if not comedic, scene for others in the room, and as I moved to the other side, I couldn't help but wonder what was going on between my dad's ears. What if he'd lost the ability to remember things the rest of us thought we'd never forget? Did he remember growing up in Vermont? That's where he was born to Swedish parents, Thorwald and Ingeborg. That's where he spent time ski jumping and ice skating and becoming a star baseball, basketball, and football player at Brattleboro High School. Did he remember the first time he laid eyes on that cheerleader Lois Denhard, who would become his wife of 63 years? How about his World War II tour of duty with the United States Marine Corps in the Pacific? The unbreakable bonds he forged with his brothers in arms there, with whom he would remain in contact for years to come until slowly their numbers dwindled. How well did he remember, I wondered, that glorious 1957 World Series in which he was a relief pitcher for the Milwaukee Braves, playing alongside legends such as Hank Aaron and Eddie Matthews and Warren Spahn and Lou Burdett? Did he remember being my 7th grade basketball coach at St. Jude's outside Atlanta, benching me for not playing tough enough in one game, and later celebrating with me when my 2 free throws in the closing seconds gave us the championship? In all honesty, the other team, Westminster, had fouled me intentionally, knowing there was no way the scrawny kid would hit 2 pressure free throws. Had I been coaching Westminster, I would have done the same thing. Did he recall how my 2 older sisters, Dawn and Chris, and I would sneak up behind him while he sat in his easy chair in the den and play with his hair? He had a special way of spreading it around so that his head was pretty much covered. It wasn't a comb-over as much as it was a swirl on top of his head. So if you caught him unaware, you could actually scoop up his hair and extend it straight up a good 7 or 8 inches. It was a wondrous sight. He would feign annoyance. "Come on, you guys." But it was always said with a laugh, so we never stopped doing it. Did he remember all the piano recitals Dawn and Chris had participated in, and those early morning or late afternoon horseback rides with Chris? How about those Christmas Day games of horse on the driveway basketball court, when we spent as much time retrieving the ball from the woods as we did shooting it? Everybody in the family played, which led to some marathon games, but there were so many laughs that nobody cared. How about that one round of golf we played at Augusta National? If you're not into golf, Augusta National is the site of the Masters tournament every year and is basically the Sistine Chapel of the sport. Did he remember how lucky we were to be playing golf on December 10th, 1998, on a 70-degree day, putting on the same greens that the greats of the game had putted on and walking the same fairways? Okay, for those of you who are wondering, he beat me by a couple of strokes, and we both broke 100. So many BlackBerry moments in a life that spanned nearly 90 years. As I finished with the right ear and the trimmer's smooth hum was replaced by a labored groan, I stepped back, not only to admire my handiwork, but also to gaze at the man I had always wanted to be. Back in the day, that's athlete speak for a long time ago, it wasn't always enough for a Major League Baseball player just to be a Major League Baseball player. Salaries weren't that great back in the day, so Dad had a job during the off-season selling insurance for Northwestern Mutual. I had always wanted to be a baseball player like him, but in the winter, I had wanted to wear a long-sleeve white business shirt just like he would wear to work. My exact wish, my mom says, went like this: I want to wear a white shirt where the sleeves go down like an insurance man." When his playing days were through, Dad did not make a career of the insurance business. Baseball was in the big guy's blood. The Milwaukee Braves made him their public relations director and later a member of the broadcast team after the franchise moved to Atlanta in the mid-'60s. And that is when my education truly began. It was then my father became the greatest influence in my life. Growing up as the son of a broadcaster certainly had its perks, no doubt about it. Not many kids can tag along with their dad to the ballpark, hang out around the batting cage, and listen to Hank Aaron ask you how your Little League team is doing. I also got the chance simply to watch Dad work. I don't think he realized it at the time, but he was teaching me without really ever actually trying. I watched his meticulous game preparation. He was always among the first to arrive at the park and never rushed through the pregame work that needed to be done. I listened to him interview players and managers and then sat in the radio booth during the game watching and listening as he called the game. To this day, baseball fans who used to listen to him tell me, "I got to talk to your dad once and he sounded just the same in person as he did on the radio." No surprise there. Dad's mantra was, "Be yourself." He never put on airs, never tried to create some persona. He was simply good old Ernie to viewers and listeners. But his greatest teaching didn't come on the field or in the booth. It came on the walk from the field to the press box. Fans who came early to watch batting practice would, without fail, beckon to my dad from 50 yards away. "Hey, Ernie!" would come the call from an unknown voice. After my father turned and made his way through the blue wooden seats of Atlanta Fulton County Stadium to come face to face with the owner of that unfamiliar voice, he would hear a familiar tale. "Man, we listened to you all the time. We came up here from Macon and just wanted to say hi." And my dad would spend time with these strangers as if they were lifelong friends. I have volumes of mental notes from meetings like that. My dad wasn't lecturing me about respect, he was demonstrating it. He wasn't preaching to me about humility, he was modeling it. During one particular broadcast shortly after Skip Carey and Pete Van Wieren were hired to be Dad's partners, Skip came out of a commercial break and said, "We head to the top of the fourth, and to call it for you, here again is the voice of the Braves, Ernie Johnson." Dad did the play-by-play for that half inning, and then, during the next set of commercials, turned to Skip and said, "Hey, if it's all right with you, Skip, you don't need to introduce me that way. You and me and Pete, we're all the voice of the Braves." That's just the way he was. Just being himself. Big guy. Those lessons learned at the ballpark during my teenage years would be a guiding light as my professional career began. The baseball player thing never quite panned out for me. I walked on as a freshman at the University of Georgia and was told to walk off as a sophomore. There aren't many roster spots available for guys who are good with the glove but can't hit their weight. That was me. So having spent so much time watching my dad work in broadcasting, I decided to try it too. From a radio station in Athens, Georgia, to TV jobs in Macon and Spartanburg, South Carolina, and Atlanta, and then eventually to Turner Broadcasting, I've heard my father's voice. Be yourself. Don't think you're special because of the job you have. Never think you're bigger than the game. Treat everyone with respect. Be loyal. Once you've done your best, to heck with it. Take the high road. I need to spend a moment or two on that last one because to this day, it remains very much a guidepost, especially in my professional career. No matter what line of work you're in, there will be times when you're criticized or when you feel a coworker has done you wrong or maybe done something behind your back to elevate his or her value and at the same time diminish yours. Back in the 1970s, long before anybody thought of Twitter and its ability to deliver up-to-the-second opinions on everything from breaking news to celebrity gossip, there was fan mail. Grasp this concept. Actually write a letter, put it in an envelope, put a stamp on it, and then wonder if the intended recipient in fact received it and would have the inclination to respond. My dad got a ton of fan mail as an Atlanta Braves announcer and did his best to respond to all of it. Sometimes I would sit in his office at the stadium hours before a game, and read those letters from fans praising the quality of the Braves broadcast.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?